Welcome, everyone. Love and peace from the Atlantean consciousness. This is Grand Master Dr. Thor Templar, and I've got a very important issue I need to cover with everyone here. This is a very critical issue. If you listen to only a few of my lectures, you better pay very close attention to this one. This is a issue that is looming its foul head on a consistent basis now, as we get more and more involved with the people and as the organization has more contact. I've talked about this to some degree before, but I want to get into even more critical issues here and get down to the real core of everything here. The problem with working with ignorant occult practitioners, New Agers, gurus, this, as I've classified in the past, occult disease, but it goes even much further than this disease situation, and I want to cover this because it's a serious issue and problematic with so many things in life. Again, I don't consider things uniquely occult in terms of the fact of the problems with the world and people are universal regardless of whether they're metaphysically based or not. But, people tend to be more vulnerable to gurus and New Agers and everything else. And the book that is listed for the Inner Order members, stripping the gurus, is a critical text that everyone must read about what's really going on, not in occultism, but in this whole New Age movement and guru movements and healing movements. And it goes on and on and on with all these things that you go to people particularly for help. And, this is not unusual, as I mentioned, in all areas of life. I mean, your doctor is more likely to kill you than he is to cure you. Your attorney most likely will fuck up your life more than he'll help it. And it goes on and on and on of the dangers of life. And a certain amount of that, I guess, people are on guard for. And boy, you better be on guard. And you better use all your spidey senses, your occult senses, to be aware of the filth and feces-ridden society that we live in. And the adages that I always close everything with, which I've now added, trust no one, is the way you need to live your life. But one of the most difficult things is, as you are a person who is seeking the alternative and you're dealing with people who you think are out there on a mutual positive path, you couldn't be further from the truth. The same nut jobs that have screwing up the rest of the world are screwing up all of occultism. And a lot of them, just as they are placed in the real world, are placed there to victimize you and to lead you down the stray path. A sad but true fact. We're finding this more and more as we start detecting and doing readings on people. And we always used to look for outside sources of people's problems. Well, couldn't be necessarily a cult, and I guess that was naive on my part, of what was happening. Things that happen in your life and so forth, then you seek occultism or the occult sciences to improve your life and to change those negative things. But what I failed to look into is the fact of, and I'm not sure why this is, almost naively to some point, since I've known so many people. I pretty much know most people in occultism, the writers, etc., either know of their work and have read their books, etc., or know of them even personally to some extent and know who they're connected with. But, we've talked about this. We've talked about the Black Lodge in the past, and the Black Lodge has infiltrated and taken over all of occultism. And this has happened where they took over all of society when 9/11 happened. I mean, these influences have been going on for many, many years, but that was a signal to the entire world, and quite in your face the fact is you blow up the two largest buildings on the planet and a whole bunch of other buildings as well that house secrets and documents, etc., which is basically what that was a cover for. And this was a giant signal. And while life has always been corrupt and evil, and that's the nature of things, this was a big statement, and people have to understand that, whether you want to like it or not. And we all try and live our lives and better ourselves as we can, but you never really can hide from the realities of life or your particular destiny. But getting back to the main point here is the fact is that there has been there is a hardcore group, and always have been, of these alternative people who claim to want to help you, from healers to gurus in particular, who are basically abusing Dark Lodge psychotic maniacs. And they may have all the nice fancy little things they want. They may sit with nice little diapers on and talk with a nice spiritual advice who bring you things. And of course you just have to bring them all your money and make sure if you're a woman you lay naked so I can fuck you, because I will bring you the joy of all of these things that come from it. Now, this is outlined in the basically in the stripping the guru of particularly these Indian cults who are pretty much sex mad and always have been, and certainly are more than happy to take your money as well. So they're sex and money mad. All the things they tell you as a Westerner you're so terrible about. We saw with Rajneesh, who had a Rolls Royce for every day of the week and was running prostitution rings, and it was basically nothing more than a sex cult. And then they tried to kill each other and everything else. I mean, I'm glad we went to Indian Enlightenment. Of course, I found this out at 12 years old when I investigated all these Raji-Maji cults, and while there are some of their practices, I found they're philosophical, and then their actual follow-through is quite shocking of how corrupt they actually are. People like the Hare Krishnas and everything else. I mean, the kind of garbage when you get into these things are not only mirror very corrupt society, you have to wonder if they're even more corrupt. I mean, the Krishnas were accused of, alleged to have hit teams, major child molestations, all sorts of criminal activities they were involved in. Of course, the exploitation of people in general. And we talk about this with society and churches and so many other things. And, Chinese who have factories ran by criminals or people they've arrested. And the military also produce products there. Those are nice, good, capitalistic ways of working. So you're supposed to compete in the Western world against the military and prisoners, which they don't pay. And of course, there's a big prison population that does in America as well, interestingly enough, that produces products and services for pennies an hour. How nice. But this is really nothing new. I mean, a lot of this started with the gurus that got involved with the Beatles and became well known. And these guys, when they went over to India, all the gurus did was try and sleep with all their wives and everything else. And of course, they are basically sex mad maniacs, because when you actually start bringing Kundalini energy up and you start drawing energies from the root chakra up, you bring all sorts of crap with it. So that's the problem with the Indian system, is the reason why even today, I mean, it's kind of amusing. They have what's called the Lingam. Basically, a huge percent of these very advanced Indians are praying to the penis still. Oh, how evolved. But they are spiritual, and we must go there and talk with them. And we must go and talk to the Dalai Lama, another spiritual man. All these people who've done absolutely nothing, is quite shocking out there. So what happens is you go to these people in a very open, your aura is open, your psyche is open, and they use and abuse you. And your family, possibly your children, your mate, or whatever, is quite common. I mean, Sai Baba, who is still, I believe, free and operating, has had numerous allegations brought against him of child molestation. And there's just so much of it. It's pretty much irrefutable, these allegations. So the whole idea is that it goes on and on with these people. And of course, they're so non-money oriented that they make sure they get as much as they can from you. And as I said, with Rajneesh, he spent it on the poor Rolls-Royce dealers that needed all the money for 10, 12 Rolls-Royces, whatever he had. So I'm glad that, because, I was very depressed by the fact that Rolls-Royce dealerships were not really, they had problems, they only had 1 or 2 polo ponies. Their kids couldn't go to Harvard easily. Now, thanks to Rajneesh, they have numerous polo ponies, and their children and their children's children are going to Harvard. How nice. So, as we go on with these things, it's so despicable if people do this. It's like the priests, of course, and so that's what I'm saying. It's not just occultism. Priests who have been molesting tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of children, institutionalized, protected by the filthy feces of the Vatican and their little goofball popey now that tries to act like he's normal while he has changed absolutely nothing in their gay cabal of evilness, which has happened particularly in the Catholic Church. But let's not rule out all those other ones, all those horny little ministers and all their little corrupt business dealings. Let's not forget all those things that happened with Jimmy Swaggart, if people remember that from 10 years ago or so, and the other ones with the 700 Club and everything else that got into problems because of not only sexually did they have problems screwing their secretaries and other people, and God knows how many other people within their church organization they were involved with. Many have been allegations even brought against people like Crouch, the famous guy, I believe, was that there were allegations brought against him that he, by the Los Angeles Times, that he was a homosexual, and so forth. So, I mean, it goes on and on and on, and it just never ends with any of these things, and there is no line to draw here between people who are so-called enlightened people on so-called spiritual path, occultists, etc. And there are a lot of warning signs, a lot of things you have to be very careful of, and we're at the Guild here, we're trying to inform people, and we have kept lists of people who are been reported to us as being problematic, and a lot of these people we are very aware of. And the problem is, if you work with them, and let's say you get some sort of, quote, attunement. Watch for that word, people. That's one of those things that tells you that there's a problem, usually, even though it's a common word, but something that puts another red flag up. So there are all sorts of things you have to be very, very careful of when dealing with people. And it's important that you be very conscious of that. Once you get attunements from people, once you open up to them, they do rituals for you. If you use someone's products, if you're following their courses, I've talked about this with people that think they can just go in and take information from people. Well, that's not what occultism is all about. There's all sorts of little entanglements that happen. These little connections, you could call them, hundreds of little streams of energy come out and start latch onto you because you've opened your aura to allow that to happen. When you train under somebody, you do this. And you have to be very careful who you train under, and you have to be very wary of people. So this is a way that the forces of evil, the Black Lodge, vampires, and curses people, because they live, being demonic that they live off of suffering. That's what feeds them. And you are going to be their victim, and then oftentimes you're going to pay them, or even if you use their bogus and crappy technology, which can make you sick and deplete you and vampire you, that's part of it. And there are thousands of machines out there right now produced that are doing that to people as well, making them sick and vampiring them. That's what they were produced for. That's why they became popular, and that's why they were given money to get out to the public. So this is a very frightening area which we've been aware of on some levels all the time, but it is now becoming blatantly obvious that there are more and more of this than we even anticipated. And of course, like so many alternative health practitioners, it's always amusing that these alternative health practitioners, who also tend to like to criticize regular medical people, charge just as much, and sometimes double what it costs to go to your doctor. It's not unusual for an acupuncturist to charge $100 to go see them, while your doctor usually charges $40 to $60. So the point is that here's an acupuncturist who thinks his time is worth more than a medical doctor's time. And I don't give one necessarily any more credit than the other, but it's the bottom line is, why is their worth more time than the others? And this is very typical in alternatives, who want huge amounts of money for a lot of these so-called healing machines. And I'm a strong believer in freedom. I think people should be able to sell and do most particularly non-invasive practices all they want, as long as they clarify that, this, I think doctors ought to tell you as well, that this is not proven to work. I may give you a pill that kills you. And if you read the little insert that comes with your meds, a lot of the side effects are little things like death and heart failure and kidney failure. Little things, So they're no better. And the fees they charge, considering they are a lot more untested to a lot of extent, at least from your doctor, you're going to get a poison that's really going to poison you one way or another. All these other people that do all these treatments are more than happy to take thousands and thousands of dollars from you for completely unproven, scientifically based, so to speak, even though there may be a long history. I don't want to get too diversed into that, but they're more than happy to take a lot of money from you, and you can spend more money on some specialized supplements than it costs you for a prescription. Something's wrong here, people. Something's wrong. So the vultures are not just on one side of the fence. They're above you, circling you, and a lot of them are telling you what a great friend you are to them and how they want to help you. And of course, that also has a large price connected to it. And oftentimes are very deceptive. So I've never had an alternative practitioner ever offer me anything for free, offer me even a discount on something. While people were brought there suffering and in pain, they still wanted their bucks, and they wanted it at the top, which was double the cost of going to the local fraud doctor. So all these things are intrinsically built within the hell plane that we are existing in, and as such, you have to watch out for the wolves in sheep clothing, to use the cliches that are out there. And it's quite frightening that the person that you're going to, the machine that you bought, is got evil energy in it that is cursing and sucking you dry. Sad, but true. And at the top of these tend to be all these Raji-Maji types, and particularly these false Tibetan boobadoos, particularly anyone that tells you that they're in the Bond Tibetan tradition, the pre-Buddhic tradition, which is known for its barbaric, torturing rituals of animals and other things. Yes, the great little Tibetans. overrated as you can get. And I'm not sure what Tibet has ever done. Certainly some of the Buddhic traditions of Tibetan Buddha traditions are very interesting and powerful, especially if you spend all your life in a monastery and can work on them. But highly overrated. But like everything, there are good and bad. But one of the key words is Bon, Tibetan, run for the hills. The other one is attunement. Be very careful. So you need to really examine things, and you need to examine who are these people, and you have to be very careful of people who are too successful. And why are they so successful? Who is backing them? Nothing happens in this world when you reach a certain level of success unless you are backed by the bad guys, because and if they think they're only pushing certain people that are bad, and that the opposition that rises up is somehow good. The problem is they support both of them. That's how the game works. So the loyal opposition, and I think that's a good way to phrase it, is loyal opposition is paid by the same people who are, so they control both sides of the fence, because it just works better that way. If you have one single force that pushes against, people tend to revolt against that. They don't like it. So where is the other force, they say to themselves? Well, the best way to make sure that you're in control of everything is you control both sides of the fence. I mean, that's how bad things are, but that's how life is. Now, you as a person in the sea of consciousness on your path to ascension and trying to break out of this consciousness that you are enslaved in right now, this prison earth, you need to be very, very well aware of this. And don't think that someone is trying to help you, that some supplement out there, that some garbage multi-level marketing is selling and telling you how wonderful it is any good, or even the vitamins or supplements that you're buying in your stores that there is. They found out that 70% of these don't even have the products in them, and since they're technically foods, they can state anything and it doesn't mean anything. Well, the supplements you're taking are bad. Excuse me, they're lying to you about all that stuff. Don't think all these products that they're somehow there to help you. Unfortunately, that may not be the case. You need to be good at checking things, checking your own energies and so forth, and checking products. And we will have other guidance on how to do this as well, so that when you go into the filth, the feces-ridden world of what it is, that you are well aware of what's going on and you arm yourself. So you have that particular problem as well, but you go to people and you may have ritual services done by them and other things, and they may be cursing and vampiring you directly and indirectly. A lot of these incompetent, buffoonish jerks who have never really trained themselves but think they do and think they know something. One of the most dangerous people that there is those who think they know something. I've been around for 20 years. I mean, that is helpful if you figured anything out to begin with. There is no wisdom, does not come with age per se. Wisdom comes with the time to figure out what wisdom is if you're smart enough. But there's a lot of older people who are as stupid as a newborn, maybe stupider. So have they figured anything out is really what the key. And of course, if somebody's older, you're thinking to yourself, well, yeah, they've had the time to do it. Probably, they have figured out better than a 30-year-old, which does tend to be true to a certain extent, but not necessarily. It's certainly not a given. So, what they're doing, these people, is they are generating huge amounts of toxic, evil energies, and when they do something for you, particularly a practitioner, or they build an item for you, which are occult-based, that is then passed on into the formulas that they then offer you, whether that's a machine or a formula or not. And this is, this is a very prevalent problem out there. And we've picked this up now on many occasions, several recently, of people who have passed on their evil energies to people that supposedly they were helping. And now we are removing them. So it's a pretty scary way. I mean, I don't know how many people have done that, but it's like going to an alternative healer, and they do nothing for you, and in some instances, maybe they made your condition worse. And certainly, this is the case with occultism. We see this with so many negative practitioners out there. People think they can go and buy things from people who are even the ones that aren't even hiding. Part of their salesmanship is the fact that they are black magicians, and because of this, they are, evil magicians, and because of this, they are so powerful. And you think you're going to go in there and just take out the prize, and you're not going to get the infection that goes with it. Well, that's another Faustian type fantasy that just doesn't work. You're going to have to pay the price for going in there, and is there any reward whatsoever? Well, I'll tell you right now, there is no reward whatsoever. The only reward is that they've vampired you, they've cursed you, they get empowered by it, and you pay them for this privilege. Oh, isn't that marvelous? So this is a very scary thing that's going on here, and those listening to me probably are, obviously are the smarter ones, and the ones that will be guided out of this dark tunnel of abyss into the feces of this common world. You will be guided out of that, empowered and strengthened through what the guild has to offer if you stay on the proper pure path. And that means staying away from all of these negative other practitioners and products. And we're encouraging everyone, and we now are offering free checks to people. If you can tell us if you're working with specific products from a specific company, let us know and we will check that. If you've had any kind of initiations, so-called attunements, and other things, we encourage you to send us a list and let us know that you've had this, and we can check that out for you. Those in the outer order that are guild members, we are posting lists for them of known Black Lodge people, and they can see that for themselves. But we encourage, obviously, them as well to make sure that if you've had these things that you contact us so that we can check to see if you've been infected and are cursed and are being vampired. Because if that's the case, if you're using guild products, while they will help you somewhat, you're still going to run into serious problems because you have to get that energy out of you. And what bothers me with so many of these things, particularly in recent years, is that, as I've mentioned in many of my audios, of how much of a piranha, how much you were shunned if you did anything that appeared to be on the, quote, dark side. Even the republishing of classic grimoires, which always tend to be a little nasty and evil to some extent, because, that always sells, and it sold 5,000 years, or 500 years ago, or probably 5,000 years ago as well, because there's the allure to that, because the positive path seems to be so unfulfilling, because it takes discipline and follow through, while the dark path tells you all you've got to be is debased and basically just enter into orgies of the flesh and the drink and the drug, and you still, not only do you still get powerful, you get more powerful because you've done that. So it's kind of imbecilic. It's like telling you you're going to have a great body if you live on chocolate and cake, and you don't really need anything else. So it is important that you evaluate what you've done in the past and who you've worked with. And if you've worked with these people and you've bought products for them and then you've followed through even further by their following their systems, you are in trouble and you need to have these energies removed. So, but as I said, now people advertise that fact. It's not too difficult when you start looking around at everything from occult publishers to people who sell products who are directly or indirectly telling you what they're into, and nobody seems to care. Well, you don't have to care because they don't really care, because they latch on to you and they suck you dry, and your life gets worse, your health deteriorates, and you become ultimately their slave. And in an indirect Faustian pact they've made with you, because if you're going to a satanic magician and using his stuff, a Faustian pact is being made. Whether you, well, I didn't agree to that. Well, you paid them. They told you where the energy was coming from. What do you think was going to happen there? And the bottom line with all this stuff is that they don't reward you with wonderful life. They suck you dry, destroy you, and they take your soul. This is not a game, people. Occult power is real, realer than any power in your life that you will ever understand. And playing with it because of the amusing, alluring fact of the dark side, or being tricked into it, is frightening. But look at things. Look at people's websites. What are they telling you on these websites? Look at the names of organizations. What does Trident mean to you? What does Tetian mean to you? What is it when a major publisher's 800 number ends with 666? What does that tell you? Are they hiding it? Well, not really. They're laughing under their breath at you, but here it is. I mean, this is the classic Illuminati Black Lodge game where they give you all these symbols, and anyone with half a brain knows it. You go to people's sites and you find out that their organization is basically satanic based. Their husbands are selling pacts with the devil on their sites. What do you think the energy you're getting from taking their little courses do? That's not a game. People who sit there and tell you that they're black magicians and that they get all this power, and then people buy their videos and buy their books, where do you think you're connecting to? And this is going to empower you, and you don't have a problem with that? Well, I'm afraid that's not the way it is. This illusion that Lucifer and Satan are your buddies that want to teach you is a complete and total lie. These are the energies of chaos and destruction and disease that rot your soul away and destroy your consciousness. They are not empowering you. They're not making you the biggest pimp on the planet. Those jobs are already filled. You're nothing but cannon fodder, and they want your money and they want your soul, and they'll take it. And the delusional psychos who run around claiming to be Christ-based and use things like crop circle designs and other things on their so-called radionic machines are actually demonic-based, are dangerous hidden ones. But if you believe in a false technology perpetrated for evil profit alone, because you want to believe the demonic story of you being empowered by this crap expensive technologies, then you've accepted a pact with the devil. And you have supported them by giving them your money and then ultimately opening up your soul and consciousness to them. This is not a joke, people. And they will mess you up bad. So, be very careful and go through people's websites carefully. Look at the different images that they are portraying. Look at their policies. What are they offering you? What are they entangling you in with their consciousness? And what are their statements? And there always seems to be a price on it. As I said, there are several warnings that you want to be careful of, and as I've stated them, but I'm going to state them again. There are warnings to look for. The term attunement is used by these crooks. The word bond, as in they want to connect themselves to some tradition, but you got to remember they're rejecting the Buddhist tradition, which is based on not killing animals and not everything. They want to go back to the primitive animal torturing, really disgusting level of original paganism in Tibet. Watch their references, the names they use. What is all that? Their terminologies. Watch their overly sweet things. If people tell you how wonderfully blessed and pure they are, and how great of a Christians they are, when you use all these different symbols, be careful as well in these areas. But take notice of names, people who seem to want to think it's funny, or bizarrely an occult publisher that would have their actual ordering number that would end with 666. You think as an occultist you'd be very careful of that. Well, unless you really don't care and telling the world who you are connected with. Be careful of somebody's backgrounds. You know, you can type some people in and you'll find out there are some authors out there who are stone cold criminals. They run violent, organized crime, and they're selling you books. They're being published. Not to mention those who write in your face, those Setian people. I mean, if you're going to join satanic organizations, you're going to get what their stream of connection connects you with. And it isn't empowerment, it's the debased filth, the feces of the spiritual reality, which is what all these negative paths are. And you're going to be dipped in it for life. And I'll tell you another thing, a lot of these entanglements, people don't stop here. You know, this is a renewable resource is what you are. You are regurgitated constantly for thousands, maybe millions of years, where you get stuck in the reincarnation cycle over and over again, and these filth, these streams that have connected you, your feces dipping that you've been in, goes with you for lives from this point on. It is frightening and scary, and you need to take care of this now. And unfortunately, there are numerous of these people out there. Just as we live in this vacuous, evil sewer of this hellplane reality that we're in, those who are on, as I've mentioned already, on both sides of the fence cannot be trusted. You have to live by the unending mottos or philosophies or whatever you want to clarify these things as I state, you create your own reality. You don't live in others. You question everything. You believe absolutely nothing. Even if you think it is proven it to you, you always leave it open to the fact that maybe this is wrong and you have to change it. You question all authority, and that means not just the goofball politicians, but the Raji-Maji diaper-wearing freaks that want your money. And those in the orange robes that come from the hilltops, who were so powerful that they were pushed out of their homeland. You trust no one. These are words to live by, as well as learn it. Be it and do it. Meaning you have to put all this in action and let the guild be your guide. Yes, we are the only light in a very dark, feces-filled sewer of reality, and at this time we are the only voice that you can trust even a minor amount. But these are not, oh, this is so negative, dude. Past the doobie, let's forget about it. It has nothing to do with that. This is reality. You have to function in a particular way if you expect to grow and empower yourself and move on to the next levels. And you don't do that by being marred into the common garbage, not only of regular society and its stupid, useless slave religions, and that means all of them, including idiocy, paganism, that people think that they reject one religion and go to some other stupider one. But that means you reject all the false, alternative, New Age, and occult philosophies perpetrated by so many of those bozos out there, the people who are tapped into all these negative groups, some who've been around for long periods of time. And we've talked about these people and the organizations they've left and the toxicity that they produce. You have to be careful. And don't assume anything produced by someone that's being sold to you is in any way valuable, number one, and possibly could be dangerous and toxic to you. And you need to know how to judge these things yourself to some degree. And of course, that's what the guild is here for. We are here to help you, and we can tell you if these particular practitioners and products are dangerous to you. And that's what we're talking about here. This is a consumer safety issue when it comes to occultism as well. I mean, there are consumer guides to the safety of different products that are used out there. Well, the guild tries to help in this way, and of course it's a momentous job all that we're doing with basically a tiny staff. Tiny isn't even a word. We're talking 2 people, or basically 1.5. We only have 1 full-time person, me. So the whole idea is that we try and help as best we can and inform you. And it is really sad to see people who are seekers out there who are trying to go to people for help who are further enslaved and vampired and cursed because they sought out the help of somebody else and have been victimized by it. Oftentimes directly, and sometimes not directly, because these people are delusional maniacs. And in a lot of ways, you have to be very careful with these people, because if they don't like you, they think that they are doing some sort of positive work by cursing and hurting you. So, it's a minefield out there, people. And we tell people this all the time. And while we are constantly trying to seek out, and if we find good sources of anything, we let people know about it. But it's a very dangerous situation out there. And if you've worked with people, you've had so-called attunements or initiations, contact the guild and have us check you out. It's a free service, and we can let you know what's going on in your occult energy fields. And it's hard for us to check everything. We do check basic energy fields, general energy fields, but if you have a specific person or product that you're using, definitely let us know about it so we can check that out. And it may be even more toxic to you than it is to other people. So we need to individually check this for you, and we can instruct you what to do to clear energies out or what you have to do. But there's no use using some particular type of machine or tool if it is toxic to you. And it may be designed specifically to do that. There's an awful lot of total and complete worthless junk out there. The placebo and delusional people out there producing products they claim work. I mean, it's pretty sad when you see these types of things out there. And of course, this is very prevalent in the so-called orgone field, which is complete junk. Little pyramids full of stones and other things. I mean, they're cute little things, and if they're not toxic, they produce small amounts of energy. But in general, this stuff is worthless and oftentimes highly toxic and make no alternative science sense. So to buy things like this, to think that they work for you, and this whole ridiculous thing out there of these products that do absolutely nothing, is part of the problem of supporting people that are perpetrating technologies that are negative and worthless. Which is why the FDA, as much as can be criticized, but like everything in life, the laws are there, and they're good laws. It's the corrupt men behind them that cause all the problems. Is that to sell a drug, it has to, per FDA regulations, it can't be benign, meaning that it can't. Well, we'll pass it. It's okay, because it doesn't do anything. It has to do something. It has to have some effect if you want to get FDA. Now, that, as far as I'm concerned, that is a good policy. And that goes in the alternative occult science world as well. Does it do anything? Is it a placebo or not? And what these people are telling everyone is that it is something that is much more powerful, and that it does something when it doesn't. And that is just as wrong, as far as I'm concerned, as selling something that is toxic. And how would they even know? I mean, the whole idea is these things are all toxic and problematical in many areas, and no one knows that when they're using it. And they don't seem to even do the basic reading of what is supposed to be involved in these things and what is used or not. And then words start to take on these entire meaning of what does all this mean, and this whole orgone thing is really pathetic, which now means just about anything. But that's not what Reich said. You're not supposed to use a whole bunch of things that people put in there, especially copper, which Reich said not to use. So it goes on and on with all these things. To think that a little 2-inch pyramid with some stones and other things in it is going to produce huge amounts of energy is absurd. And it's a very base earth energies and very toxic in general. It's not, and that's not what you need in this day and age. You need much higher energies, much higher vibrations, instead of low vibrations that tap into the very polluted, feces infected world that we're living in. So beware and have everything checked out. If you've dealt with people who are these dark side practitioners, use their courses, followed them, read their books, well, you could be attached to them. And most likely you are, particularly if you followed their practices. Reading a book most of the time doesn't do that much, but if you follow through on that, you start doing rituals and other things based in someone's system and practices, you've connected to them and you are now hooked by them. And they are vampiring you and sucking your soul dry. If you've had done initiations, you opened yourself up entirely to these people. So, I mean, there's a dangerous fact. Everything that the guild produces is very pure. And it can be tested. But that is not the case with others who are businesses just there to get your money. And secondly, which is even more scary, is that these have a greater or a hidden agenda. And that agenda is to take your energy, to vampire you, to take your soul force, and to use and abuse you for eternity. And these realities are here and now. They are real. And happening all the time. I don't know how many products I've tested in the past that came out extremely negative. And these people, I think several of them didn't really mean to make negative products, and I talked to a few of them. I said, your machine and your board here is putting off negative energies. And of course, well, I don't know what negative energy is or not. I don't know what this means. Well, I'm afraid that a counterclockwise spin coming from an energy board is negative. Counterclockwise is bad. Plain and simple. And I had a radionic machine one time that spun counterclockwise energies when it was off, and when it was on, it did double that effect. So someone was thinking they were using this machine to help them when it was putting out negative energies that were hurting them from day one, and the machine cost $1,500 to get the pleasure to do that. And it goes on and on with all these things. There are dirty technologies out there that are inherently toxic, and one of those is orgone. And I have many, many cases of people getting ill from using orgone machines. Now, these are real. If you believe in these energies and following it through, and I'm assuming a lot of the people listening to this are following through, taking the courses, doing all those things that are involved in that, and in a naive and positive way, you are seeking your empowerment, and that's all very well and good with the guild, but once you step out of the protection of the guild and our research and our honor and our years of service to the public and our general attitude of empowering the positive and being part of positive world change, once you step out of that, you are in big trouble. You are in no man's land. And let's make it clear, there are some good products out there, and we will let people know about those. But there's also a lot of very bad stuff. And the problem is that if you're using bad stuff, there's a serious problem. And, a lot of people went, well, I don't know why occultism doesn't work for me, or why I can't go up to other levels. Well, a lot of this has to do with these things that have been put on you, blocking you, and things that you are using all the time. And, while we often check for curses, we haven't been checking for vampiric things, for bad initiations. We're now checking for all these things, which are very dangerous and stop your evolution as a spiritual being, but they definitely knock the legs out from under you of your personal empowerment. So you're never going to get to a higher level because you're constantly being sucked and abused, and energy is being drawn from you because of your connections in the past. So this is not a game. Don't buy into the false empowerment from the black magicians who want to feed you a lot of nonsense, which never comes true, but they have gotten their empowerment from you, and they've made a little deal. You've made a deal with the devil. Don't forget it. When you buy these people's products and they tell you right up front who they are, and they have names that state it in their titles even, this is considered a pact with the devil. And they now own your soul. You willingly went in, and you have done the all-important exchange of energy. Now, money is the exchange of energy. This is a tricky way that they have drawn you in and made a deal with you. After all, you wanted it. You paid them sometimes hundreds or maybe even thousands of dollars. And you've thrown your soul in on top of that. Scary people, dangerous people. And you may have made a pact with the devil without you even realizing it. So with that, people, I will leave you with the words to live by. There is no reality until the occult scientist creates it. Question everything. Believe nothing. Question all authority. Trust no one. Learn it, be it, do it, and let the guild be your guide.